Sawubona, welcome to Prime Time with me, Palisa Muchuminyani, right here on ANN7 TV First, fast and live. Now, on our first story for the evening, was former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan the trigger for author Jack Pauw's book, The President's Keepers? Well, Sunday Independent has published a source-based report that indicates that Pauw did not intend to write his controversial book until he was approached with a lot of information by a group led by former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. Now, the article by Sunday Independent editor Stephen Motale says, and I quote, Jack Pauw was approached with tons of information by group led by former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. And the book came after several meetings between Pauw and Gordhan and former intelligence head Mo Shaik and the former SARS executive Ivan Pillay and Johan van Logenberg. And almost all information regarding affairs at SARS provided by Gordhan, Pillay and van Logenberg. Information on SSA, especially the alleged looting of millions from principal agent network/funds given by Shaik. And at one of the meetings held in Stellenbosch, also attended by prominent businessman, Pauw was given the go-ahead to publish information provided by Gordhan and his team. Now, Pauw was given the assurance that he would be provided with sufficient budget to cater for all litigation. The Sunday Independent says the book has backfired and Pauw is now facing multiple potential lawsuits, including one from SARS. A criminal case has also been opened against Pauw at the Hartfield police station. And replying to ANN7's queries, Jack Pauw says he had never met either Gordhan or Ivan Pillay before writing the book and has no lawsuit against him. And Gordhan has also denied their involvement. Now, others implicated in the article did not respond when contacted by ANN7, but have denied all allegations to the newspaper. Now, Jack Pauw says the allegations are untrue and malicious. And Pravin Gordhan said he had absolutely nothing to do with the book. And Ivan Pillay, the former SARS executive, said he did not have direct or indirect contact with Pauw. Now, Johan van Logenberg says the allegations are false and malicious and spurious and defamatory. Mo Shaik, former intelligence head, also denied allegations in the article and that he provided any information about principal agent network. Mukhaitsu, now in studio today, we are joined by our political analyst, Tepo Khadima. Say, very warm welcome to ANN7.
Good evening.
Always good to see you. Now, this issue about Jack Pauw and the book and Pravin Gordhan, what would you say about it? Because now they're taking us from pillar to post. They are actually denying having to have met before, writing the book. What are you saying about this? Do you think that Pravin Gordhan must definitely be involved in funding or supporting Jack Pauw's book before it published?
Well, in the first instance, I would like to express my regret that despite the numerous invitations to the implicated parties in this case or the subject matters of the story, they have at all material times seemingly refused to come on this platform on ANN7 to be able to effectively, I think, answer for themselves so that we are not found to be shaving their heads in their absence. But as they continue to show no interest whatsoever to come here or that reluctance, we are left with no other choice but to have to speak about them in their absence. However, the number of questions need to be asked. Mr. Jack Pauw is reported to be saying, well, before writing this book, he has never met any of the people that are referred to in the Sunday Independent article or column by the editor, Mr. Stephen Motale. Now, Jack Pauw, who is he? He's a veteran journalist. If anyone in this country can believe him in terms of really the profile of articles that he would have written over the many years, and taking into account that the people we are talking about here are not just ordinary people from the street. These are people that have held very high influential positions in this country. Now, I just cannot see how any one of us can be expected to believe that rebuttal by Mr. Jack Pauw that he has never met them until the signing. On the other hand, we must bear in mind that the book itself is not based on, for example, a court record. The information that is published therein is, of course, subject to be contested, and in many instances to be successfully contested, because there have been others that have adduced substantive facts to contrary to what has been published in the book. So the book itself, it would appear that it was published for one reason and one reason only. That was to tarnish and cast aspersions on the people that they have spoken about, and in this specific case, about President Zuma. Now, when we come to Mr. Pravin Gordhan, we know that he is a self-declared arch-enemy of President Zuma, and that he is highly aggrieved, still remains aggrieved to this day, that he was removed as Minister of Finance. And that also at the same time, he remains aggrieved in terms of him having had no power whatsoever to influence South African Revenue Service, and particularly Commissioner Moyane, as he had desired to do so. So therefore, we can safely conclude that because he has got an axe to grind, the allegation that he has been the chief architect or the chief source of the information that was given to Mr. Jack Pauw to publish in the book, in the absence of him coming forth and coming on this platform so that we can be able to place these pertinent questions to him, we are left with no other choice but to have to believe what Mr. Mutale's assertion is in the Sunday Independent. But and why did Mr. Gordhan in the first instance actually see it fit not only to sign a book that he had not authored, and by signing as an author, but at the same time encourage people to go and read that book?
Yes,
why did he believe their facts? Yeah.
Immediately after the book was published, right, at an exclusive shop store somewhere in Sandton, apparently Mr. Pravin Gordhan was the one signing the book and then, telling the people to buy the book. So how can a man that goes out and signs on those books, but then at the same time saying that she has never met Jack Pauw? Like, how does that make sense? How do you go and sign in for the book and give, autographs on the book that you've never even given, any information on? Now, does it perhaps say that, does it give the Sunday Independent report, or do you think maybe the impression that the book was a deliberate bid to discredit some people?
It is definitely a deliberate bid to discredit some people. Because to date, whenever that they have been challenged, they have not been able to stand by the information that they published and say, yes, we are factual. For example, Mr. Mutale, in his column, he's referring to, I think, Mr. Demanovich, who has vehemently, if anything, even produced an email where Mr. Jack Pauw apologized and said that he was played, that he was misled, in saying that Mr. Demanovich was indeed the source in the Special Operations Unit, when in fact that was not the case. And yet in the book, now the question is that with him, with that email having known, how can now this allegation continue to be in the book unless the book is only carrying his name as the author, but it was written and edited by third parties who are effectively puppet masters behind the curtain and pulling the strings. And also for Mr. Gordhan to have not only him, by the way, him and all the other cohorts who have been telling us that we must read the Mr. Jack Pauw's book. What exactly information do they have that is not in the public domain to say, or what facts do they have to say that indeed what is published in that is truth? And unless they are the ones that they are the source of the allegations as published in the book, how would they really believe that indeed these are facts, and not only to even be autographed in the book, but even to be encouraging people? And it's even worse that even the Deputy President himself, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, believes that what is published in Jack Pauw's book is truth. The question is that based on which facts? And unless he has got first-hand information,
That
how
the
can
people
he
should know
therefore
about.
have so much confidence to believe that what is published there is truthful? And now, of course, the litigations, quite correctly, have to fall in like the Victoria Falls. There's no other way that there can be no litigation, taking into account that people's careers have been, there's been an attempt to destroy people's characters and their careers with this book. But the book itself, it is not be able to stand in the court of law because it is not referring to where the facts had been tested in a court of law, which is really effectively, I think, the appropriate forum. And had the book been based on that, maybe there might have been, some of us would have said, there might be some facts that are around it. However, what is even more worse...
Just a second there, there are also allegations that the former SARS executive, Ivan Pillay, and Van Logenberg may also have leaked confidential information. What kind of action can they face, if these charges are actually true?
Well, the law is very clear. Those that worked at either state security or worked for South African Revenue Service, it is illegal for them, and it is a criminal offense for them to take any information or any knowledge and disclose it to third parties outside of the context of the operations or the work that they would have been employed to do. So, I mean, that goes even in corporate world. Whenever you're entering into agreements, there is always the confidentiality clause, and that confidentiality clause always, at all material times, bind the people even beyond when they are no longer working for the entity or the enterprise. And in this case, there is a law that's specifically prohibits the disclosure of this information by this, whether they are former employees or they would have still been in the state's employment. They have, under no circumstances, had any right. Therefore, they must be criminally prosecuted if it is indeed true that they are the sources of the allegations as contained in Mr. Jack Pauw's book, and is Mr. Jack Pauw's book in quotes, following what Mr. Mutale has now told us, that in fact, he is not the author. He is just, he's a glorified author that he's not even plagiarized, but is somebody else's book. And in this case, we have to safely assume that is Mr. Pravin Gordhan's book, since he was so enthusiastic to autograph the book for the many people that have bought it. But if anything, if what Mr. Mutale has written, and until contested successfully, it is truthful, I think that the people that in the thousands bought this book, if anything, they were effectively sold a dead cat in a bag, and it's going to start stinking beyond imagination.
And the law will definitely take its course. Well, thank you so much, Tshepo. Thank you for coming to ANN7 Prime Time. Mukhaesu, yes, that was Tshepo Khadima, our political analyst, on the news and updates on the Jack Pauw book. But then now moving on